That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Comic Reviews. I'm Sid2, and I don't have a ton today, only 3 books and a trade. So let me start off the video just saying if these are the days that I need more content. So if you have any single issues that are coming out, month to month that you think I should be picking up, any ongoing series, please leave those in the comments below, and I will add at least one issue to my pull list. Or if you have any graphic novels or trade paperbacks you'd like to see me discuss, please leave those in the comments below too. And I promise to pick up keep an eye out for the volume, and if I see it, I will grab it up and talk about it on the show. I don't think enough people know that, or just not enough people care. I don't know. Why don't we go ahead and get some more input? Do you guys like the trade talk? Would you like to see me continue talking about trades? I don't know how relevant they are, since I do a lot of stuff that isn't like new. I just think it's nice to have something that's kind of stands on its own. It's not as subject to the weekly grind, and it's just a more complete thing to talk about in a review, as opposed to talking just my random thoughts as I'm reading through a series. So please let me know if you're interested in seeing that continue to go on or not. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the last thing I read, which was Doctor Who, the 10th Doctor, Year 2, number 11. So maybe starting... Hi, Haley! Hi. Maybe starting with 2 issues from now, we'll go to Doctor Who, the 10th Doctor, Year 3, number 1. I don't know. I still think that's a really weird way to do comic books. And she's throwing stuff and dropping...
Oh, you open up the freezer.
Oh, yeah. Love. Anyway, so before I get straight into this book, let me show you something I am going to be picking up. Torchwood. I actually really like the Torchwood show. I think it's like really hit and miss throughout the entirety of its run, but when it was good, it was so damn good. So I really enjoyed that show. But what more so makes me want to pick this up is Torchwood is back in an all-new series co-written by Captain Jack himself. So I just think it's interesting. John Barrowman's going to be co-writing the Torchwood comic. That's really neat. I'm really excited to read that, so I'm going to add that to my pull list, and we'll pray to the comic gods that the store remembers to get it for me. Anyway, I'm still getting kind of tired of these David Tennant picture covers. Don't get me wrong, I love David Tennant to death, but I mean, there are only so many set photos of the guy. Unless you start taking like still images from the episodes, it's gonna get ridiculous. So anyway, I really like this issue. This is just kind of back to the weird kind of unique storytelling that I really like with this book. And last issue was alright. I just really liked Hardest stuff. But they're in New Orleans, and they're back to putting music on panel. It's just interesting to see comics use music and try to integrate it in a visual way. So we have a lot of notes flying around on the panels, and I really like that. It's really visually intriguing to me. I also just really like the way it all works here, and it's kind of cool to get like New Orleans in the 20s. So we got the jazz scene, and that's just really neat. And you got Cindy falling in love with Roscoe, not Rasco. Rasco does fan film reviews with me, but Roscoe, who is a jazz musician. And it's just a bunch of neat little stuff here. What I really like is we get like a villain that is using sound again, because that's what we had a couple, like I think 2 or 3 story arcs ago. We had a villain that was using we had villains that were sound, and we had good guys, allies that were just embodied sound. And so we have a villain using sound as a weapon, which is really fun when you have the Doctor who has a sonic screwdriver. So it's just a really unique thing to do in comics. And I just like seeing it. I think it's a neat idea the way they're visualizing a lot of this too. You have notes and energy created by those notes going around to visualize the sound, and it's helpful that it's not a particular song, it's just notes. And then there's another interesting bit where the Doctor's like method for defeating the villain is to have a bunch of musicians play music that just isn't in any kind of key, doesn't have any kind of melody to it whatsoever. It's just nothing but random notes that do not sound appealing at all. And that's visualized through, like, I'll get that really close to the camera for you. That's visualized through, like, notes that are, like, really jagged and messed up because they just sound inherently bad. And we also get a look at the villain in this, who's, like, being spawned from music. And I think it's really neat. It's a really neat way to show music. I really like that. And so it's just a cool book to do that in. I am really disappointed that we've lost the Rose the Cat stuff. I miss Rose the Cat. I like those little backup comics. I will just say I was looking through this, and I really don't like this cover that they show. I guess maybe I shouldn't complain about the Doctor Who covers being kind of like just pictures of David Tennant that they photoshopped, because I just really don't like the subtext of this cover. It totally looks like they slept together. And that is not at all what's going on with the Doctor and Cindy. And so I do not like that cover whatsoever. Just the way it's drawn looks really, really subtextual. Romantically subtextual, and I don't like that. But yeah, it's just a cool book. Fun stuff going on in it. And again, I like the to see when artists and storytellers together in comics will try to depict sound. And I just think it's really interesting because it's just so foreign to comic books, because there's no way to communicate sound in a comic naturally as like to your ear, so you have to find ways to visualize sound, and I just find that really interesting. But yeah, I'd be curious if anyone that subscribes to me picked this book up. Could you play the notes that they're putting on screen or on panel and have it actually come out as anything that even sounds kind of musical? Or would it just be random notes? Because, I mean, it just looks like a bunch of... I don't know anything about musical notation, but it just looks like a bunch of the same music notes. So I don't know. I think it would have been interesting if the artist had taken the extra trouble to make it so that the notes, even though he wouldn't indicate the timing, but if he'd made the notes actually play out something. So, I doubt it, but I'm just curious, so let me know. But yeah, I just really like this series. It's not great anymore. I think when it started, I think the first year of stories were just fantastic. Lately it's just been okay, but still interesting enough to keep me invested. Cool book, though. Let's go ahead and move on to Weird Detective #1. Yay, I got this book. I'm so happy. Sorry, I get caught up with the ads on the back of these sometimes. So this is really, really well written. It's meant to be Lovecraftian. And, you know, a lot of people try to do Lovecraft, but they don't really know what they're doing. They just make it too weird, but they don't do enough to really cement it in a lot of the other things that Lovecraft was doing, besides just being strange. By strange, I mean, you know, just unique sea life kind of monsters. We do get a Cthulhu full page spread that looks really freaking good. But like a lot of people will just do, you know, the monsters of Lovecraft or the creepiness of Lovecraft, but they won't get the combination between the monsters and the creepiness and just the general weirdness of it all. And we get that here in every way, and it's also played for comedy, and I really appreciate that about it. And the art too is just so good at depicting just the inherent weirdness and creepiness of Lovecraft's stuff. So we have a detective who, up until a couple months ago, was just a basic by-the-numbers kind of guy, nothing really special about him. But then suddenly he just becomes like the greatest detective in the department overnight. And the police are the police captain's kind of curious as to how that's going on. And it's because he's been replaced by an alien that has other senses which are allowing him to solve crimes. But he's really got a mission of his own. And so he's working towards his own goals and just trying to function as a police officer within, or as a detective within that, within trying to achieve those goals. And apparently he switched bodies with the original detective because this guy's just chilling. That's a little inconsistent with what happened a couple pages earlier, but I laughed so hard I didn't care. Anyway, we've got one thing I thought was an interesting choice, besides just having a lot of characters in this book who aren't white, was to give us a lesbian couple as just characters in it. I'm not really sure if they're going to be adversaries with the weird detective, Sebastian Green. I'm not sure if she's going to be like a full-on adversary because she's originally brought in as his partner to investigate him. But I think it was interesting to do them as, one, we've got a woman of color. One, we got a woman. Two, she's of color. Three, she's a lesbian. So there's like all these different kinds of things going on with her. And like that's just, Lovecraft, as much as I like his stories, he was a racist bigot. He was a classist, racist bigot. So it's just kind of neat to see someone taking like the worlds and the interesting things that he created and adding to that while updating it and making it not as dated and not as stuck in the past. I also like that Sebastian is just at times given a very, very fishy look. Just looks like a very fishy kind of guy. The art does a great job of working with this story, which isn't something you see very often. His eyes, I wouldn't be surprised if the artist was like drawing actual fish parts at certain times and then just morphing it into a human face. It really works. Yeah, Weird Detective. It's just a cool book. I really like it. It's freaking weird and creepy and it just gets everything right, man. Good stuff. And again, we got a Cthulhu page, so I mean, we all would have been disappointed if Cthulhu wasn't in this book at least once. And so the main premise of the book, what ends Sebastian Green is working toward, is he is from a race that was destroyed, or not destroyed completely, but whose home was destroyed by Cthulhu and the Ancient Ones. And so he is working to find a way to defeat them. And apparently, like, Earth is their next end game, their next goal. But he's trying to stop them, not because he really cares about Earth. He, in fact, doesn't like humans very much, but because he's trying to just stop the bad guys. He's doing the right things for the right reasons, but not for the reasons that we would consider right. And that I really like. And then there's just some really great, fun narration. It takes itself. It's got a lot of like really interesting elements, but it's just it's still got like a nice style of humor. So like he goes through all of our senses, and he's like various organs in the ear canal hold on. Let me start from the very beginning. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the ability of the mind to correlate all its contents. For example, the retina, a literal extension of your brain, transforms photons of light into neural signals. Various organs in the ear canal transform vibrations of air into temporal patterns firing along a specialized nerve. Raised buds on your tongue, G-protein receptors on the tiny hairs inside your nose, are but a subset of touch, sense receptors that cover skin, bones, muscles, blood vessels, etc., transmitting data on temperature, pressure, pain. So really you only have 3 senses, but flatter yourself into thinking you have 5. I don't mean to sound condescending. About your senses, I mean. But I have 17. And that's our first, indication that this guy isn't human. And that was just a really, it's just a really fun way to express all that. And it kind of gave me there are a lot of good chuckles in this book, but there's also just, a real sense of how this world is built and works. And so I'm really, right from issue 1, I'm on board with this. Again, as always, I'm more of can you just give me a story that stands on its own before you start setting up an entire universe that I have to deal with and unravel, and you start to set up a run that's going to last for years and years. I would have liked it to start more on those lines, but it doesn't have to. That's a personal thing for me. So if you're hoping for more just short form, single issue storytelling, this isn't this first issue isn't what you're going to be looking for. I don't know what happened to Sanitarium. I really like that book for just being a one and done kind of anthology horror series. And it just disappeared after I think 2 or 3 issues, which disappointed me. What can you do? But I'd like more single issue horror stuff to go along with this kind of thing. But yeah, cool, really cool book. If you like Lovecraft, you should be picking it up. Published by Dark Horse, $3.99 for the first issue, and it's double sized. So I assume maybe the second issue will be probably a bit shorter, but $4 for that long an issue is pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to DC Universe Rebirth Batman #1. I feel like we've been here before. Anyway. No, I actually really did like this story. And what's important about it is closer, not quite, but it's closer to a one and done story. What I also really like about this is it's a really basic story just about Batman. Hold on a second, it's driving me nuts. I like this because it's just a really quick one and done ish. I'll get into the ish part. It's just a really quick one and done story about Batman saving a plane. Because we talk about this a lot where Batman is just a man and he can't do the things that Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, whoever you want to name, can do, where they can just save a plane. Like Supergirl's first episode, she just saves a plane in the opening act. So this just deals with the fact that Batman can't do that. And in here, he does. He risks his life doing it, and the only reason he doesn't die, he's Batman. We all know he wouldn't have died. But the only reason he doesn't die is because at the last minute, 2 new superheroes come up and save the plane. And they're going to be, superheroes for Gotham now, too. So it's going to be Batman dealing with that as well. I really like this cover, by the way. It's a really good cover. Let's see here. Catwoman, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter. It's a Tim Sale cover. Clayface, Solomon Grundy, Penguin, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze. I see Poison Ivy off on the side. It's a neat cover. But no, so we're gonna have Batman dealing with trying to, be a non-superpowered person in a city that now has functioning superheroes. That'll be an interesting story. And that's part of the issue. So it's like, it's left on a big cliffhanger. Oh my god, there are superheroes in Gotham now. Like powered heroes, I guess. I don't know, whatever. In Gotham now, so what's he going to do about that? But also, the reason why the plane is going down is, left up to, I assume, where we're going to get into with all this stuff. And that's pretty cool, too. There's the panels I was looking for. We see that whoever supposedly fired the rocket is actually dead and that there's someone else that did it. So we got, Batman almost dies trying to save this plane. And just the way... I won't even spoil the conversation he and Alfred have as he's about to land the plane and, just all the ways in which he does it. It's just cool that he does it. I just really, really like that about it. It's Batman going to the same levels as all the heroes that he's around. It's Batman being Bat-God in a perfectly believable way that still, importantly, keeps him human. And I really like that about it. You see that it's all in the motivation of just trying to do the right thing. So it's just Batman doing, essentially a very simple, for comic books, a very simple thing. It's not a universe-ending, threatening plot or anything like that. It's just Batman trying to save a plane. I really like that. That's what makes this a really, really good story. Great way to start off a Batman series, and it builds from Morrison, as opposed to rereading Morrison with Snyder. It builds from Morrison because we already have a really connected Batman universe. One little part of the conversation he has with Alfred is telling the guy who's going to be the new Bat Boy, I guess, I'm not sure, is telling him, say I'm sorry for not getting to complete his training, but tell him if he's still interested to talk with Dick. He's a better teacher than I will ever be, or something to that effect. And so there's your little tip of the hat to Morrison for what he did with Dick and Damian. So it's building from that, and it's continuing on with Bat-God as opposed to going back to not being Bat-God and getting to Bat-God again. And so I just really appreciated that. It's just a really good story. Damn, this is good. Good shit. Good shit, ladies and gentlemen. Good shit. Alright, so there's that. And then let's go ahead and go on to the final thing this week, which is Red Knight Volume 2, The Birds and the B-Listers. I have one of the same complaints. No, I've got both. Both complaints are pretty much the same, one less or so. But one of them is just as much a problem, which is this is not the standard size of a trade. And that is legitimately pissing me off. Damn it! I know, it's stupid, but when I put it on my shelf, it sticks out slightly from the other trade paperbacks. And it's not okay. It's not okay. The other complaint I have, and this is just more disappointment, is it's in black and white. I really wanted it to be in color. I know how expensive that is. He had to do an Indiegogo campaign last time to make it happen, and I understand that, but damn, it was nice to read in color. And I just don't like black and white comics as much as everyone else in the world, I guess. Though it was kind of neat to see the little dot dotted shading thing again. I haven't seen that in comics in a while. And to be fair, I don't read indie. I know it's still pretty prevalent over there. And what I do like about this is every issue is its own story, but is like just seeding an arc throughout it. So I think that would really help for the monthly readers that want to do that as an option. So I'll just talk about each issue. The first one, we have 2 superheroes in town who are like posting on their YouTube channel basically about all the cool superhero things they're doing, but they're really setting up the crimes for themselves to solve or to come to the rescue. And Red Knight wants to try to talk to them and get them to realize that there's a right way to do this and that they're just being selfish about it. But if they were more like him, then they could be allies with him and Martha and yada yada. Again, I think it's too wordy. Look at that paragraph right there. That's a whole paragraph of dialogue just from one character. And then it continues on into 2 more word balloons. And so just stuff like that, I'd prefer if you could tighten the screws just a little bit, not much. Just find a way to say the same with less. Because I don't think that's impossible. Again, I'm not as big a fan of the art in this, mainly because it's in black and white. So there are some cool... Like, I think... do we get a different artist each issue? I think we might. That's definitely a different artist. I think so, at least. I'm pretty sure we got different artists the entire book. No? Guess not. Different styles, then. It seems different to me. So Red Knight goes to talk to the guys, but really they are only interested in themselves, and so it turns into a fight, and he and Martha have to stop them, which was kind of neat. Just cool little action scene there. Martha Brown is a fucking badass, though. And yeah, it was just a cool little story, and then we're left with, excuse me. We're left with, like, the building villain of the book, just seated there, basically. Not a ton. And this is probably going to be the same guy that killed the mob boss from in just one of the scenes in the last trade. So we'll see where that goes eventually, whenever our next trade comes out. And I'm really happy for Manus that he's continuing on with Red Knight. I think it's a great series, and I hope he goes with it for a very long time to come. And then the next one, I just love how comic booky a world this is, because we go from, like, it's so real, but it's real people in a comic book world, which I really like. So we go from 2 guys having an argument about a stolen car to, we'll see who's kicking whose ass, beep, and that's just cool. The car turned into a giant robot. And then that's just this whole thing with an evil scientist that doesn't like that has his own shit going on. I'll get into it. He created a device to go between dimensions, but once he got there, he saw that the characters on the other side of the dimension were evil and wanted to rule Earth, so he came back, and now he's trying to take over the world in order to prepare it for the upcoming invasion, but everyone just thinks he's crazy. But there's this scene I really like with him, where he stabs one of his henchmen with a bunch of nanobots, and the guy dies. And then, here we go, yeah. His henchmen all gather together because of this a little bit later, and decide to to overthrow him and just take his car robots for themselves, because he just straight up murdered one of them without a second thought. And so they just kick his ass and tie him up and leave him. And then they go take the car robots to go rob a bank, and Red Knight and Martha have to stop them, and they get a car robot of their own, and it's just cool. It's just cool. There's a great action scene. I'm not a huge fan of the art in the action scene. It probably would look better if it were colorized. It's just really hard to tell what's going on in some of the panels I found. Without color, it is sometimes difficult to discern what's happening panel to panel. So I found that kind of disappointing. And Todd does something else in this too that I won't get into. It's just a cool character thing for him. And the final comic book story in here is about a guy who got arrested in a bank robbery. He got arrested as the getaway driver for a bank robbery. The car crashed, and he ended up getting arrested, being the only one arrested. His partners got away. And while in prison, his mother died. His partners threatened to kill his mother should he rat on him. And so he took up magic, because why not? And so now he has the ability to control birds. And I really like that. It's a neat, it's Hitchcock meets superheroes, and that's cool. And they're actually a legitimate threat to Red Knight, even though he's bulletproof. I think that was kind of a neat idea. And it's just this feels like an episode of a television show, honestly. I could see this as an episode of Flash or Arrow or something. Just one of their one-offs where there's a villain who's got some kind of weird ability and is causing trouble in the city, and they have to find a clever way to stop him. That's kind of what was going on here, and it was just neat. And I like that Todd shows that he's not just two fists, he's actually kind of got a head on his shoulders as he comes up with a way to defeat the bad guy here that I thought was just really clever, and I'm just going to let that one be. And he learns, it's a good story. He learns something. He learns that he should talk to his mom more, basically. Just stuff like that I really like. So those were the three, comic stories. And then we got, just a couple pages basically introducing the Justice League of this universe. But these are just the union of superheroes, and these are all the characters that are in it. And that are the big names of that universe that we don't get to read. Though I would probably... I know you won't do it, but Manos, since I know you're watching, I would totally read an X169672 one-shot. I'd pick it up. Sounds like a cool idea to me. And then we have a story called Martha's Choice, and this I did not like. I like the overall tone and the message and everything it does for her character, but I thought it was really, really sloppily written. Okay, it's broken up into three parts. There's a prologue, the body, and an epilogue. The prologue and epilogue are in third-person perspective, and the body of the story is in first person, which isn't a change that's super problematic, but it's still, jarring at first when you read it. But then there are just a lot of grammar and spelling issues throughout this that I just... I'm reading comics to read comics, so if I'm going to read prose... I'd like it to be well-written prose. And I'm sorry to say this just isn't. If the story had been great, I probably wouldn't have cared about all the errors, but the story is just okay. And I found a lot of these, language grammar errors really, really distracting. Let's see if I can find one real quick. Yeah, of course I say that, and I can't find one easily, but just they're there. To be fair, you're not. To be fair, you're not reading this for this one story. You're not buying this for this one story. But I was just disappointed that it was written the way it was. Just some more oversight, being a little more careful with the editing and just paying attention to perspective and the grammar of it would have worked. That was one thing I did notice. I noticed a couple, like the wrong tense of the word was used. And I'm not typically a grammar Nazi or anything, but I found that kind of distracting. Particularly if you're going to do prose in a comic book, it should be really good prose. But whatever. That will do it for this week's episode of Comic Reviews. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I did convince you to go pick up Red Knight Volume 2, The Birds and the B-Listers. Really clever title, given the stories that were given in that book. I really enjoyed that. Both volumes of Red Knight are great. I highly recommend picking them up. And if you haven't, go check out the Real Manos' YouTube channel, or, go see him on Geekvolution sometimes. Alright, everyone, that will do it for this week's episode of Comic Reviews. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.